join us up on the stage. While everybody's joining, in the essence of time, I put together 2 slides really because this whole session, your first session, is going to be on precision ag. And I think everybody in this room will fully recognize that precision ag will fundamentally change the way that we farm. The tools that we use, the methods we used, I think everybody's well aware of that. But as I look and interact with my clients and with companies, that data that's created with precision ag is fundamentally changing not just the farm, but the agribusiness companies that support it and the food companies that purchase that input. So if you think about a craft all the way, this is our source to consume life cycle, kind of a field to fork, you know, the sustainability or the food traceability that craft wants for their consumers, that data is being created by this panel on the farm. And how do we get that data from the farm all the way to really the consumer is another really important piece of precision ag. So don't just think really close to just the farm and precision ag, but really think about how precision ag is impacting everybody in this room. When we look at precision ag from EY, and I work with a lot of our clients to kind of do scans of the innovative products and services that are out there, we really look through 3 lenses. So I'd ask you today, as you hear from the panel, to really think through these 3 big questions. So first, what is the product and service? You know, just purely, what does it do? How is it going to provide value? What's the market of that product? There's a lot of great products out there. This is a great first question. The second one is start to get to the hard questions and what value does it create? So first of all, if it's aimed at the farm and what they're doing in the field, how does it ultimately create profitability for farmers? Does it increase yields? Does it increase the price when they go to market their products that they can get, or does it reduce their costs? Ultimately, it has to be on one of those levers, or it has to reduce the risk that farmers face for you to have a viable product that's going to go to market. The other piece that's often missed is precision ag innovation that's targeted at agribusiness companies themselves. So again, how can you help Monsanto or Deere create more revenue or also manage their expenses is another piece. And always remember, you know, agribusiness's revenue is farmers' cost. So always keep that in mind when you go with it. And then the very last one, and really the Achilles heel, as you look at precision ag, if that product or service needs data from producers or from other companies, how are you going to get that data? First of all, how are you going to establish the trust so you can get that data? Second, once you get that great geospatial data, how can you manage it and control it? And then really the third, how is that data really being used with it? So those are the kind of 3 questions and big questions that we ask as we look through with technology. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed panel. The theme of today is really around innovation and driving that. And to me, the 2 big questions always for innovators are, how do you get funding for your innovation? And then another very interesting piece is, how do you bring to market and drive adoption of your products? And with, you know, very large companies here and smaller, more entrepreneurial startups here as well, I think I'll stay away from the funding and want to focus really on kind of the adoption and how you're bringing products to market. You know, 3 years ago, farm finances around the world had a lot more cash available to try new things and to invest and make decisions. Obviously, 2015 and looking into 2016 looks like it'll be a much tighter market, cash flow around the farm, and really all of your customers will be tighter. So I wanted to open up the first question to have a discussion around, how are you driving adoption of your products? How are you explaining the value to farmers and to growers throughout the US and really globally?
Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. So, you know, we have with our products kind of a pricing model where we work directly with the growers, we work with others up through the supply chain, but you know, the pricing is less than $1 an acre for what we're doing. So it's relatively inexpensive overall in terms of the operation. And we look at that as saying, you know, a few $1,000s in software as an investment can save any number of $10,000 mistakes that you may have on your operation. And that resonates through with our customers. You know, in a year particularly where there's price pressure from low commodity prices or just commodity volatility or weather uncertainty coming out of an El Nino, you think of those things and you put that in a context of, this is the time when really analytics can actually help you make or break your operation potentially, where in years of the past 5 years, where you really had a boom going on in agriculture, you could be a little sloppy. You might adopt a technology that really doesn't add something to your bottom line. I think the onus is on us to really deliver some solid value, and those technologies that do will bubble to the top, and I think we'll see a consolidation in the space over the next few years.
Just, I'm going to add a generic comment, more about just adoption. It's kind of interesting. Again, we're going through these big pivotal moments in agriculture with new technologies and new capabilities and new services, and that, you know, with analytics generating new insights and mobility being a part of agriculture. And one of the things that's interesting to me is that it's almost like everyone who's in this space right now has to get used to that aggressive and just get it in the market approach that you saw, you know, the companies like Facebook have, right? We don't have necessarily a business model up front, but we know that people are going to love this, and we're going to try it, and we're going to get huge adoption, and then we're going to sort of back our way into a business model once we prove out that there's value. Again, when I say we, I'm not talking about John Deere. I'm just talking about the industry as a whole delivering these types of innovations to market. And so that's something that, you know, traditionally in agriculture, it's like you go back and you do the numbers and how much is the farmer going to pay for this and in this space and this much. And of course, that's still going to happen, and you're still going to have to generate revenue, but we just have to start thinking as an industry more, I think, like the Silicon Valley approach of let's figure out innovations that deliver value and iterate our way and innovate into new business models as opposed to just trying to capture value with traditional business models.
For facing UAVs, you know, one of the big challenges facing adoption, I kind of referenced at the very beginning, is this issue of regulations and whether or not it's legal to even do. So moving that issue aside, again, I guess you know, that is a huge impediment. But one of the things that's in the Ag Funder report pertaining to this issue, and it echoes what both of you guys just mentioned, is the support systems for the technology in terms of the software, in terms of the user interface, and what the ROI in actual attainable dollars or whatever unit makes the most sense is the biggest challenge. And that's making it usable, making it accessible, and making it impactful.
Yeah, I think for me that the biggest thing that drives adoption is creating experience and addressing problems and issues that really do matter, and involving your customers quickly in that solution, and then iterating fast to learn together to come out with something that's really valuable. When you do those things, then there's obviously the pricing mechanisms and the rest of it, which we're all familiar with working through. But that philosophy, I think, is a shift in agriculture.
Jason, how do you get farmers to trust the data? I mean, I think each farmer will say, I know my data, I know my farm better than any data could. I've been on this field for 40 years, I've seen that. How do you get people to start to believe in the science? I used the example of 4 years ago when we had the big drought, you know, and everybody got hit in all the I states. The next year, demand for all the drought-resistant traits was off the chart, even though it was an anomaly by the data perspective. So how do you start to get farmers comfortable with that data and really relying on it?
Yeah, it's a fundamental question. It's a fundamental question in research and in meeting farmer needs. You know, for me, I think the way you think it through is you have to have an objective metric where you can show that you can make a decision that's as good as or better than the person who would have made it. You know, we face this in breed. I'll give you a breeding example where we're advancing products, and you know, we have dozens of breeders, hundreds of breeders that make decisions, and we invented capability that would predict which products should be advanced, and then we benchmarked it against what people were actually doing, and what we learned was the new predictive methodology was about equivalent to the average in terms of success as what a breeder would do. And you know, most scientists say, well, it's only as good on average, that's not really very good, this is not really that useful. Well, you've got to change the way you think a little bit. Average means it's better than 50%. And any day you can do something better than 50% and do it like that, repeatably and reliably. That's pretty interesting. And that gives you a model to work on. So, I don't think you're going to come out of the box beating the experts in many situations, because experts are really good. But I think you can work towards that.
I'll add something real quick, just academic. The likelihood of using a new technology is the preconceived trust of someone in that technology minus the belief that I am better than the technology. If that equation is positive, then there's a likelihood of use. So when you're looking at like these new, whether it's data or new technology, you can actually try to look at both sides of those variables, right? If you're looking at the belief that I am really good at something, then go and find tasks or situations or jobs where maybe farmers don't have the highest confidence that they are the ones that have it figured out, right? And so there you'll find an easy, lower barrier to entry. And then to manipulate the other variable of trust, preconceived trust in the new technology, there's a whole bunch of psychology around it, which is branding and, sort of being transparent with your predictions and showing range so that they don't, feel like it's an absolute must-do value. So it ultimately is just a simple psychological equation, and you kind of have to look at both variables to try to have a shot at it.
But Barry, we've talked a little bit about kind of the on-field stuff. Obviously, off-field, farmers are managing now not 100 or 200 acres, but a lot of them 5, 10, 15,000 acres, and the operations of running a farm are much more complex. How have you seen the adoption kind of data and using some of that to improve the pure operations side of farming?
It's usually, well, fundamentally, it starts with the accessibility to the data, keeping the data fresh. Like, you want your operators, for the large operators, and like especially, they're wanting every single bit of information. Where's my guys? Where are my equipment in real time, or as close to it as possible, so that they can make corrections throughout the day, throughout the week, and optimize for what the Mother Nature is doing around them. Beyond that, then it really turns into the questions coming in from the analytics side that's trying to happen concurrently, based upon that raw information, saying, okay, what should be my next steps? Like, are we doing what we should be doing? And then there's the other side of the equation. The third leg to me is always the financial, where financial is yeah, I planted. The problem is, did the market go up or down? Like, how should I be hedging my bets for the fall? And trying to understand, okay, should I be preemptively taking care of this, or should I delay things?
Thanks. All right, the classic last innovator question would be, what's the biggest barrier you guys are seeing for your individual businesses and kind of success for that? And specifically to your technology, so not macro business for the larger Deere and Monsanto, but really to the innovation that you're trying to launch in the field and around your products. Maybe we'll start with Julian at the end and just kind of work this way back.
I was going to take the easy way out and say commodity prices. Pass.
Yeah, well, of course, for us, the greatest challenge is scaling the business properly. And as we look across agriculture, we have a great footprint in the Midwest in corn and soybean agriculture, which is a significant fraction of ag in the U.S. But as we move to the East Coast, we move into crops like peanuts, into other areas, and in Texas, where you have corn production, corn in rotation with cotton, things get more complicated. So for us, it's expanding out and serving those different marketplaces and making sure that our customer service and our attention to detail is at a level that's expected from our brand and from what we've done in the Midwest.
Accessibility and understanding, I guess, of the impact of it. It's, at the end of the day, a UAV is still a very complicated product, and the UAV industry hasn't quite worked down all of the integration kinks into existing farmer workflow, and until we solve that problem, I think we'll continue to see adoption be somewhat low.
Yeah, I'll give you maybe a slightly different view. I think farming is an incredibly complicated operation, both across Illinois, across the Midwest, and even just within a farm, across fields and within fields. Where there's a big variable, operations are a big variable, there's many, many choices. And, you know, we've mapped out a lot of these choices, and, you know, getting the fundamental science in place that really does give you lift reliably and repeatably, that's complicated, and I think that's why a lot of people are in this room. That's why a lot of innovation is required. I think as we unlock that, I don't see adoption as a barrier. I think people are hungry for this technology. I think they want it. I think they want it reliably, and it works.
One word really is flexibility. Like, you can have two corn growers in Illinois and they'll have completely different business practices. So being able to have one software solution that's able to fulfill their and integrate cleanly with their business operations, I think that is our biggest challenge. And in addition to the notion of, oh, maybe it's not corn now, it's cotton or it's peanuts, they have different sets of business requirements and their normal practices, and so flexibility is key.
So obviously data is a big piece of all of your offerings, and precision ag is really the fundamental behind it, is the data that's either being captured by sensors, analyzed through algorithms, and then put back into predictive models that are really going back to, you know, either drive decision making or drive automation in equipment or in planters, if you think that tactically. What's the biggest challenges you see around data? Go to a lot of conferences here, a lot of the struggles of farmers sharing that data and kind of getting it together and collect it together, and then also just sharing the data and sharing B2B and B2C. So maybe just a topic of that is, a lot of people think about new innovations they have and are thinking about the algorithms that will drive that. All those algorithms need that data, so maybe a discussion on that.
I would start with one of the big challenges I see is the ease of use of having the end user, that's the operator in the vehicle, or the farmer that's, you know, literally boots on the ground, allowing them to actually collect the right data. It's sort of what I always tell people, like a farming, you know, if a farming is interacting with anything or any of our equipment, they're most likely stressed out or annoyed. They're stressed out because they've got 2 weeks to finish it, or they're annoyed because something's not working the right way. And so when you put someone in that situation, it's like, even if they really care about the data, or they thought they were going to care about it, at that very moment, the only thing they care about is just getting the job done. So I see one of the biggest challenges to data is actually just at that very, very onset of when it gets collected, and making it really seamless so that it gets collected well and in a seamless fashion, right? And that goes for, an example of that is the whole idea of input tracking, right? You know, making sure that you figured out what seed went into the planter, into what field, right? Right now, that's really not a seamless thing, right? You have to rip off a barcode and go punch it in, and then you forgot and you enter the wrong barcode. So all of that, I think, ultimately will lead us to now we have the data, and now we can get folks to actually look at it and do something with it.
I think, you know, one of the great opportunities with being a small business is I get to experience many of the nuances and outliers. So we've had a guy call us the other day, asking if we bought, it was a farmer, asking if we buy data. He was selling. Were we buying? And it struck me as odd. You know, I talked earlier about our philosophy there, that the data, the information, the analytics that we're producing, it's the most valuable to that grower in that field in that year. And, you know, in that situation, you have to step back and say, you know, there's so much confusion in the marketplace over data and its value. And ultimately, I think we have to help growers understand that data is most valuable to them. And although there are some in the industry who aggregate data, pull it together in a big data approach, and then try to use that as benchmarking and other things, that's not as valuable as that information can honestly be to that grower in that yield. And that's I think, a fundamental shift that we have to make in the minds of people about the value. And that call out of the blue really shocked me in terms of the misconceptions around data and value.
I've seen it coming from a marketing capacity. I've seen big data, because it's been a hot button for marketers in terms of being able to collect information about online habits and stuff like that. And there have been pop-up industries that say, oh, exactly, basically what you just said. Sure, we have terabytes of data. How much are you willing to pay for it? And there are people that pay for it, which is kind of terrifying. But the real value is in whether or not the data is meaningful. And I think that's the disservice that the cliche big data term has done to not just the ag industry, but a number of industries, because it becomes this sort of catch-all phrase where sometimes it's valuable and sometimes it's not. And really what you're looking at the end of the day is what work does it actually do for me, whether it's big data or statistics or whatever the name ends up being. And I think that's something that needs to be communicated to the end user, and maybe even migrate away from using the term big data, frankly, because it doesn't really convey any meaning in and of itself.
Yeah, I think we're kind of at a pivot point, and maybe just before a pivot point, to where you move to this concept of passive data, active analytics. While you have to put a lot of energy into data, it really detracts from the analytics you can do. And I think as the industry becomes more connected, more seamless, data just becomes passive. It just gets collected along the way. And I think that's the vision we've all got, and that's what will transform it. But that's driven by the questions you want to ask, and that's the analytics. So that's...
I think it boils down to trust, really. From the very beginning, the question really is, does the grower trust you with his data? And then beyond that, does the grower trust the data itself in terms of the quality of the data? Then really finally it ends up being, do they trust the analysis done with that data? Is the analysis been presented to them in a way that it's discernible? Is it just flying right over his head versus, yeah, it's down to earth, it's consumable, and it's shareable because of that?
Great. Thank you very, very much. I thought this was a great panel, really some insightful things on really precision ag being one of the top topics in the industry that we're focused on. I think at this point we're at our first break, so